Hey everyone, it's Damien here from School of Attraction, and today we have a very special guest with us. She is a self-proclaimed sex geek, completely and unabashedly fascinated by sex, love, and intimacy in all its aspects, from the biological to the psychological to the spiritual. She has a Bachelor of Science in Biochemistry and Human Sciences. Has a graduate diploma in Applied Science, a Bachelor in Arts and Languages and Literature, and a Master's of Science in Sexual Health. She works currently as a psychosexual therapist and coach. I know that she's run workshops in a few different countries around the world. She's also written 3 books, having written one myself. I know how much work is involved. It is, of course, the lovely and beautiful Jacqueline Hellyer. Jacqueline, hello and welcome.
Hi, Damien. How are you?
I'm doing really well, thanks, Jacqueline. Now, look, it's really, I know that everyone likes to talk about sex. It's the hot topic for today. I think that today I'm going to sort of share a lot of my quirky, weird, embarrassing stories when I was younger, because I think all men, we go through this. I think sex in some ways is almost more intuitive for women at times than it is for men. I think we have a lot of societal pressure that twists our view of sex. But I know that when I was a young guy in my 20s, I was so focused on going out and I'd meet women, and when it came to sex, it would be I had to last at least 15 minutes, and I had to kind of go at it vigorously for a while, and I had to do at least 3 different positions so she didn't think I was boring, and then hope somewhere along the line that she orgasmed, because if she didn't, I'd be a failure. And this was like these KPIs that I applied to sex. And have you experienced that with guys, or am I just weird having had that?
Oh, no, it's incredibly common, and it's not just the guys, it's the women too. We have this attitude to sex in our society that is very KPI oriented. It's all about a performance, and you've got to check all these boxes, and if you can check them all, then it's been successful, and if you don't, then there's a problem. Yes. And we forget that sex is actually about 2 or possibly more, but predominantly 2 people, or just 1 even, having an experience of pleasure. And it's not about what you do so much. It's about the pleasure that the 2 of you creating together. And that's
a tough one as a guy to wrap my head around. I mean, not now, but I know that it certainly would have been rough, because isn't it? To me, sex is all about orgasm as a guy. And if I don't, I'm sad. So if she doesn't, then she's sad, and it was horrible sex.
Yes, and that's one of the big problems. So we've got so many myths in our society about what sex is, what it should be, and so forth. And let me just give you a little bit of history, just to put it in context. So for most of Western history, we thought sex was bad, and it wasn't something that you should really do. It wasn't very spiritual. It wasn't godly. It was just something that you had to do for reproduction. And in that time, we suppressed sex as a whole. It was just this unfortunate thing you needed to do. In particular, we suppressed female sexuality. So we knew nothing about female sexuality. We brought girls up to know nothing about their sexuality. If they were too sexual, we'd kill them or lock them up. And all the men knew growing up was basically masturbation. And the purpose of masturbation is generally to have an orgasm as quickly as you can. So people would get married, and knowing nothing else, the man would essentially masturbate inside his wife. Now, hopefully she enjoyed it, but that was the model. So then when we got to the 60s and 70s with the sexual revolution, and everyone should like sex and women should like sex, we only had one model, which I call the adolescent male masturbatory model of sex. Sometimes I call it the 3-course meal approach to sex, which is, you've got step 1, step 2, step 3, and you're done. If you start at step 1, sure as hell, you've got to go through to the end. And if you don't finish, there's a problem. And so this is where this whole idea of, your key performance indicators and sex being a performance rather than a mutual co-creation of pleasure. So you're not alone. It's one of the biggest things I have to work with people on, like completely changing their view of what sex is.
it's an important thing. I don't like to admit that in my early days, my first foray into dating coaching was when it came to sort of pickup artists and pickup artist books. I don't like to admit that, but I have to, for the purposes of saying that what I read in a lot of those books was that if you don't, pardon language, but if you don't fuck her properly, she's going to leave you. Has it been your experience working with men, women, and couples that couples just fall apart just because the guy isn't amazing at sex yet?
No. No, look, occasionally, but that's generally if the guy won't look at it, because some guys are so stuck in this model that they've got to have it all right. And one of the other key myths that we have is that somehow it should just be natural and we should just somehow know what to do. So if you're the kind of guy that thinks he should somehow magically be this incredible lover and understand the complexities of female bodies and female sexuality without any training and without even communicating with the particular woman in question, he's never going to be a good lover. And I sometimes get women coming to me very frustrated with their men because their men won't talk to them or won't let them talk. And you get a lot of guys who seem to think that they should know. I mean, look, you get a lot of women who think the same thing as well. Like, one thing I've noticed, having spoken to thousands of people in intimate detail about their sex life, is it's not like men are like this and women are like this. No way. Like, there's a huge range. I actually see more couples where the man's got the lower desire, for instance. There's a myth in society that the men are gagging for it all the time and the women are holding out on them, which is just so not true. Basically, you kind of need to take everything you know about sex and just kind of throw it out the window and start again, because the beliefs that we have around sex, and the more I do this, I've been doing this for years and years now, and the more I do it, the more I realise just how screwed up we are as a society. And just getting back to this idea that, sex is something that's supposed to be kind of natural and easy, and if there's a problem, there's something wrong, and, well, it can't be me, so therefore it's probably you, or can't be you, so therefore it must be me, depending on who's got more confidence in the relationship. But sex would have to be one of the most difficult things to do, really. If you want to look at sex as an art form, if you actually want to master the art of sex, of lovemaking, it's something you have to study. It's a skill that you have to learn and develop and cultivate. So if you have these ridiculous expectations that you should just be absolutely amazing straight up, then you're never going to be very good at it. Now, if you happen to be very good looking and charming, you'll probably get lots of women who are happy to have sex with you, and they might be so grateful that they'll just pretend they're having a good time. Or they've also bought into this same thing that, oh, I'm supposed to come quickly, or if I don't come, he's going to think I'm a frigid, or whatever is going through her mind. And then you get two people who are just not actually connecting. They're just doing what they think they should be doing, which is often acting like porn stars, because that's where most people get their education from these days. And there's actually no real connection. And without the connection, you don't get the absolute sublime deliciousness that you get from good sex.
It was something I was going to bring up later, but you kind of brought it up now, and it's actually a message that I try really hard to give to the men that I'm talking with. But when Tim is saying that he's got connection troubles, guys, if anyone else is having trouble hearing us, please feel free to let us know. As far as I can tell, everything's going fine, but please let us know if you still have trouble understanding. But yeah, sorry, Jacqueline, just going back, I've just lost my train of thought. What were you just saying? You were just saying, oh, yes. I used to have the feeling that, that sex, it was supposed to be amazing when you first met someone, when you first met a woman. Like, if you would just meet at a bar and go home together, the sex should be amazing. But I learned very quickly that if you don't like someone, like if you don't really click with a woman, the sex can never be good. Like, you cannot have sex that's amazing unless you really actually like someone. Like, that is an impossibility that I've discovered over, years and years. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. A good example is my current partner I've been with for 7.5 years. When we first met, I didn't know this, but she didn't really understand yet what the big deal with sex was. She had never really had an amazing experience. But she was trying to get out there and put herself out there sexually. And when we met, we both agreed we didn't want a relationship. And her thought was that, all right, what we'll do is we'll just meet and go to my house and we'll have sex together. And I insisted on meeting and actually spending some time, like a proper date, have dinner, talk, get to know, have fun, sort of connect, create chemistry before sex would happen. For her, that was a weird thing for a guy to request, with sex on the cards. But it wasn't until that happened and that experience, it unlocked something for her, because she had never had connected sex where she really felt that she liked someone, that she really liked. And I've realized as a man, that's what makes good sex. You can't have good sex without really liking them.
Yeah, absolutely. Because sex is a multi-dimensional thing, and there's an intellectual component, there's an emotional component, then there's the physical component. And if you're just focusing on the physical, well, it just becomes mutual masturbation, which, yeah, can be fun, particularly if you're off your face and you don't really know what you're doing anyway. But otherwise, and if we're talking about turning this into an extended relationship, you're never going to have good quality ongoing sex in an established relationship if you're just focusing on the physical, because it's boring. If nothing else, it's boring. And I get so many people who are sort of waiting for the lust to descend. Come on, lust. And it doesn't work like that. Things happen, you get tired, and this happens to men just as much as it happens to women as well. A lot of women don't understand that. A lot of women think, as you just mentioned, your current partner, initially she thought, this is weird. Why do you want to connect with me? I'm offering you sex. Isn't that what you want? You're a man. Aren't you some crazed sex fiend? Because we all know that's what men are like, don't we? I think it's so derogatory to men to think that's all you want to do is get your dicks wet. I mean, seriously. But that is so, and something important for men to understand, because so often I'll get a couple sitting on the couch in my consulting room, and the guy's saying, I want to connect with you. I want to have a meaningful connection. I want to connect. She's like, no, you don't. No, you don't just want to have sex. He's like, no, I don't. I don't like it if you're not into it. And she's like, oh, come on. Men are all like that. I give you sex. What's wrong? Because I don't want you to give me sex. I want us to have a mutually beautiful experience. And, sometimes men think that they do just want to have sex. And if they're in an established relationship, I've found it's generally because they're not having sex, or they're not having it very often, or they've got a partner who they haven't actually figured out how to get her in the mood, and so she gives him sex. And then the man becomes starved for sex, and so then he starts becoming a bit obsessed and quite compulsive about it and won't shut up about it. It's not because he's a sex addict. There are sex addicts, but that's not sex addiction. That's like telling someone who is starving that they've got a food addiction because they think about food all the time. In fact, it's not even sex addiction, it's actually about a connection addiction. So it was not addiction, desire. It's a desire for connection. A lot of women don't understand that for men, sex is a way that they can connect. And for a lot of men, because what?
I was just saying, and validation is a big part of it for us as well.
Yeah, it can be. Yeah, because often men, probably more than women, even today, although it is starting to change, often the only way you can actually get emotional connection with someone is through sex, because you're not supposed to cry, you're not supposed to share your feelings, you're supposed to be a man, which means the only way that the guy's going to really feel that connection, which is part of being human. We're a very social species, and we are a pair bonding species. We get a lot of wellness from having intimate connection with another person, with groups, but also in particular with a special someone. It's part of being human. It's what we're like, a bit like birds in that way. And if you have no way of communicating that, then often the guy will think that it's just about sex, when in fact it's bigger than that. But it's about the only way he knows how to connect to a woman. But that's not most men, I've found.
No, not in my experience. I think that's the thing. It's when we feel denied or when we feel insecure, that's when the worst of us come out. But I certainly know that in my experience personally, and talking to a lot of guys, sex is how we feel that we're loved. You know, it's sort of about being sex.
Lots of women too.
It's a lot of that.
Yeah, it has all this meaning attached to it. When in fact it's just one part of, like, when I talk about sex, I'm not just talking about intercourse. And I think it's important we get the language right here, because if we're saying intercourse, that's just part of sex. If we're talking about sexual energy, and I like to do that, you know, I've done all this tantric stuff as well, and I like to talk about the sexual energy because that's something that flows between a couple. And you get that when you're not even touching each other necessarily, just thinking about each other or knowing that they're coming, you know, that all starts to lift the energy and to get that flowing. You know, you share a nice little floaty text with someone, oh, that's kind of sex as far as I'm concerned. And it's about
go on.
Yeah, and so it's also about taking sex out of the box, because we've got this sex box, you know, that box. We never talk about sex, do we? No. But we know there's the sex things over there, and then every so often, you know, we like take out the sex box, take the lid off, do the sex thing, put the lid on, and away it goes again. We don't talk about it, because we all know we don't talk about sex, you know, not in intimate detail. But getting back to what I was saying earlier about the art of sex is actually a very difficult thing. Difficult in the sense that you need to focus on it. And there's subtleties and there's layers, and the only way you're going to be really good at it is to really understand yourself and to really understand your partner, which is one of the reasons why you can only have really good sex with someone you know really well, because you need to be able to open up to each other and talk about what's going on. Otherwise, you're just relying on that initial kind of attraction, which is generally just a projection of your idealized fantasy of who you want to be with. It's actually not the person that you're having sex with. It's just this kind of fantasy creation of who you think they are, right? And if you're doing that, you're going to get severely disappointed when you find out that actually they're not what you thought they were, because actually they're not your fantasy. They're actually a real person. Yeah. But if you're open to getting to know this real person and you start having a dialogue around your sexuality in a fun, playful, sensual, creative way, then it's like sex becomes your hobby, your mutual hobby. And it becomes a constant co-creation. It's a fun thing, and you find out what works for each other in the moment, because it's going to be different all the time. Well, ideally, and that's what keeps it interesting.
Yeah. Now, this is as a guy. Oh, by the way, I'm getting some reverb through your mic, perhaps. I don't know if the other's good. As a guy, I know, because I have a history of being a nice guy that is too accommodating and not trying to make sure my needs are looked after and trying to please too much. And that's not all men. That's just a certain sort of brand style of men. But one thing that I know is that there's often a lot of shame around sex for guys and women as well, of course. And you talked about talking about sex with your partner. And I've learned how crucial it is to not just making sure a woman's needs get met, but making sure your own needs get met. Because most people I know are walking around with sexual fantasies that they want to talk about, that they would like to experience, and we feel so ashamed of our fantasies. We feel so ashamed of the little things we want to try or just vocalize. And we never do. And most of the guys I meet, because they're too busy trying to be nice and so scared of offending, and sex is such an offensive topic, that they don't bring it up. And so in a relationship where neither party they have sex, but even when they're having sex, it's like this covert thing they're doing, but they're not really talking about it. You know, you talked about having fun with it, but I think the thing I really want to ask is, because I know this is critical, how can a man think about talking about sex with a new sex partner without it being awkward or weird, or, you know, how can he create that trust and comfort in a conversation?
Yes, that's a really good question. And certainly one of the things that people say when they've worked with me is that I give them a language to talk around sex. and something that had been awkward has become something that is easy and desirable and actually fun to talk about. So the first thing you have to do is start getting more comfortable yourself around your sexuality, and even being able to articulate it to yourself about what you like, what you desire, and to be able to articulate that, so that when you start talking to someone, you've got the words for it, you've got the language. I know some people, like, they just subscribe to my blog, for instance, or they've done one of my courses or my online courses. So they start kind of finding some really nice ways to talk about it. I use a lot of analogies and so forth. When you first start talking to someone, you don't have to go into huge detail. That's a really important thing. It's a getting to know somebody. It's just a start. You just start by, holding their hand, seeing what the kiss is like. And if you can start talking about that right from the first touch or the first kiss, oh, that was really lovely, I like that, that's nice, then you're opening up a space for a dialogue. Now, you have to keep in mind that you don't have to know the answers. It's not like you've got to tick a whole heap of boxes, like, do you like oral? Do you like anal? Can I tie you up? That's just insane. If anything, that's going to turn people off straight away. There's this whole thing at the moment in the positive sex community about consent. And yes, of course, consent is absolutely vital. No always means no. But you don't know what the yeses are up front. Like, a yes is a variable thing. And it changes in the moment, it changes in the day, it changes with a partner. So do you like oral sex? Well, probably, depending on the situation. Do you like anal sex? Well, yeah, potentially, but I don't even know you yet. So, do you like threesomes? Well, I don't know. I don't even want to talk about this with you because we're on our first date and we've just had a kiss. So like, talking about sex doesn't have to be about talking about everything. It just starts with a really nice, that was a really nice kiss, can I hold your hand? Oh, now that is feeling nice. And often just talking about what you're feeling in the moment is a really good way to start getting comfortable about talking about sex. Oh God, your hand, your skin's really soft, that's lovely. Oh, I'm getting a tingle. Whatever it happens to be. I'm probably sounding a bit girly there, but guys can do this in their own way. And I mean, just on that point, the men also need to realise, everyone needs to realise, is that everyone's kind of confused in here. Everyone's confused. It's not men or women, old people, young people. It's everybody. Everybody is challenged by talking about this topic. We grow up where it's not talked about openly, it's whispered, we use covert terms if we talk about it at all. We grow up thinking that sex is something that you don't talk about. We don't have a language for it. So, don't think, anybody listening in, that you're weird if you have trouble talking about it. Or if you've tried talking about it and you haven't done it very well. Yeah, because I mean, where do you learn? Where do you learn? And you're not going to learn from porn, by the way, guys. Too many men in particular, because men tend to watch porn more than women. I mean, women do, but not to the extent that men do. If you think that talking about sex like they talk in porn is going to be the way to turn a girl on, you're kidding yourself. Can I talk about porn for a minute?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
it's really important that we talk about porn. I'm not against porn. I mean, people have always liked looking at people having sex. So it's just the latest technology. In ancient Greece, they used to paint them on urns and do mosaics. These days we have the internet. It just goes without saying that we will have people having sex on the internet, right? But you need to understand that sex is a visual medium designed to titillate. So what you see in porn is what looks good and sounds good. It's not necessarily what feels good. So, for instance, you're going to see a lot of women going down on men because this is really visually interesting, whereas this is very dull, right?
Course, yeah.
You're not going to see a couple locked in tantric embrace having non-stop whole body orgasms for an hour, because it's pretty dull to watch, you're going to see that, yeah, do me big boy, yeah, which of course can be fun too, but that's all you see. And you don't also see the lead up to it. You don't see how you will get a woman into that kind of mode on porn. Because what they actually do on the porn sets is actually she shoves heaps of lube up her, and he gets all these fluffers, which are these women who just kind of do this to him until he gets an erection again, right? And then, get this, they pretend because they're acting, right? Oh yeah, it's so good. Oh my God, right? Because she's lubed up and someone else has given him a hard on because she hasn't given him a hard on because she's just the co-star. And they do it, and if it's not working, that cut, retake, splice it together, and you get something that looks like these people have suddenly just gone, oh yeah, take me big boy, I'm ready like this because your cock's so bloody huge, right? Because he's one of the very small proportion of men who've got a penis this size. Most penises are only about this big. They're not that big, really. Sorry, I don't mean they're not that big. They're huge.
Thank you. I was going to say,
but they're not like these, you know. They're not like the porn stars. Actually, I have to say something else on that point. Of all the thousands and thousands and thousands of sessions I've done with people, right, the thousands of people I've seen, I have never ever had a woman come to me saying that her partner's penis was too small. Never, not once. But I have had a number of women come to me saying their partner's penises were too big. Because when a penis is too big, it hurts. It's uncomfortable. It limits your sexual experience. It's a pain. It's annoying. You've got to really work with it. If a penis is a little bit too small, hey, you know what vaginas do with small penises? They go, whoa. Because a vagina just closes over whatever's inside it. So if it tends to be a little on the more modest size, don't worry, she can still feel it. And what else? You've got the rest of her body. And as a beautiful male lover, you know how to work the whole of her body. It's not just about what your penis does, as wonderful as your penis is. Anyway, I've been going on a rave. You probably got some more questions.
Yes, I do. No, but I think it's very interesting because I think that is kind of the question for a lot of guys is, you know, oh, by the way, on the item, when you mentioned porn and technology, I'm like, I just got VR and I saw VR porn for the last time, like just a week ago. It's mind blowing. But anyway, for a lot of men, porn is, yes, you're right, where they get their education. That's very dangerous. And the question then is, because the men watching, they want to learn to be better lovers, and that's not just about sex. I'm 100% on board with that. How can they start to learn this stuff? I mean, you know, for a lot of people, this is a journey. It's a lifelong journey to be a better lover, to enjoy sex better yourself. But how do you start that journey? How does that work for guys?
Well, you start with yourself. You start to notice, for example, what your key erotic themes are. And we all have different erotic themes. Some people are more sensual, some are more playful, some are a bit more ribald, some are into power exchange. Like, there's lots of different ways, and there's combinations of all of those as well. So looking to your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own desires will start to get you in touch with what's right. And be careful that you're... Okay, so if you do watch porn, what do you choose to see and why? What is it about seeing that type of interaction that satisfies you, that appeals to you? I mean, two people can watch the same type of porn for quite different reasons and get very different things out of it. You know, some people will put themselves in the role of one of the players, and other people just like to watch, or some like to imagine that they're in there. You know, there's different things that we get out of it. But also just kind of keep in mind, well, what's not there as well. Like, your porn can be quite good for just like, oh yeah, it's a quick fix. It's a bit like going to McDonald's. You know, I'm hungry, I'll just pop into Macca's and get a quick bite to eat. It can be the same with porn. I'm a bit horny, I want something to help me get off. That's fine. So you've got to be really careful that you're not taking that and then assuming that all of sex is that, any more than you would think that all of eating is going to a fast food restaurant and saying, oi, can I have that please? And bang. Because as we all know, fast food's pretty dull and it doesn't really satisfy you. It's okay for a quick fix, but not in the longer term. Now, in terms of actually really starting to understand sex, finally, our society is waking up to the possibility and the beauty and the power and the magnificence of what sex can be. And there are a few of us, not a lot of us, but there are some people out there who've actually made a commitment to studying this and understanding it and helping people find it for themselves. So you can find people like myself out there who, offer trainings or who offer sex therapy and coaching and can help you get in touch with what it is that you need to know or what you'd like. And look, we're many and varied, and there's a lot of different approaches. I do have a very connected, sort of a more sensual approach to sex in general, particularly in workshops and so forth. If I'm doing one-on-one with people, that's different because that's more of a therapeutic kind of a scenario, and I really don't care what it is that what their sexuality is. I'm just there to help them. But the thing is that a lot of what we've had in the past has been very much porn star versus prude. So it was either, let's just, sex is kind of bad, so we'll just have very simple sex. It's primarily for reproduction, it's just really super basic. Or it's got to be this sort of out there. And a lot of sex has been very, it's very sordid, like bad. In the past, sex was bad and we all knew it was bad, so it was bad to have sex. But now, sex is supposed to be good, but it's still bad, which is a real mindfuck for modern people. Because if your idea of sex is sort of this porn star stuff, then how are you going to relate that to someone who you do love? Because that's a different sort of thing. And a lot of people in our society still fall into that, what I call porn star versus prude. It's also known as the Madonna whore, where, someone you love, you've got to have very simple, very beautiful, it's going to be also lovely, simple sex. And then you fuck the bad girls or you fuck the bad boys. Right? Women fall into this as well. I see heaps of women who are kind of like, I can really only get turned on by the bad guys, but I really love this man because he's so lovely and he looks after me and I want to have his children, but he doesn't turn me on. Because people have got this, this crazy idea. So anyway, so in the past it was really hard to get good information, good quality information. Fortunately, from around the 60s as well, when the West opened up to sexuality, it also opened up to concepts like Tantra, which is essentially how to have good sex. And it comes from a culture that actually studied sex in ancient India. There's also Taoist, which comes from the ancient Chinese, who also studied sex. They studied it as an art, they studied it as a science, they studied it as a spirituality. And unlike the West, they knew a lot about it. So all of that information came into the West, which was really good because that sort of started opening people up a little bit more to possibilities. Unfortunately, Tantra's been tainted a lot with a real hippie herbal kind of a flavour, which is fine if you like hippie herbaldom. But some people go, isn't that sort of, what kind of those weird hippie people do? And it's not. It's not. It's really just about understanding that sex is so much more than just this. And it's certainly so much more than just hard shagging until you have an orgasm. It's a completely different approach. And when you understand this approach, it just, it's like the Matrix. You take the little blue pill, or is it red? I can't remember which, red or blue. You take that one, there's no going back. There's no going back. And I really love it. I get really excited because often I'll be working with people and then they'll have an experience and they'll come to me and they'll go, oh my God, now I know what you're talking about. Oh my God. Oh my God. Generally they can't say much more than oh my God, because it's just like, it's like the world has shifted. What you thought was reality is no longer reality. It's different. And I'm talking about just having sex. And often people think it's going to be some sort of like mind-blowing kundalini rising, so because, being Westerners, we're all into like really big and it's got to be huge. And I mean, a lot of the Tantra courses you go on, it's just all about having some really big experience, and we're all just going to keep breathing and shaking our bodies until we have some kind of physiological reaction that makes us think that we're having some kind of amazing spiritual thing. And it's not. You're hyperventilating, and like all this stuff's happening. It can be good, but basically what you want to find is that the sex and the love sort of energies in your body merge in you and between you, and you just open up to love. And then you start having heart orgasms, and you have whole body orgasms, and you feel like you have orgasms beyond your body. And men can have this too. It's not just women. And it is so much different to just having an ejaculation. And it is so different to that whole, okay, I'm horny and I'm hard and she seems to be wet enough, so now I'm going to go in and hopefully I'll last long enough and hopefully I'll stay erect long enough and hopefully there we go. It's sort of like, it's like, oh yeah, thank God I lasted for 3.5 minutes. Hopefully she'll be happy with that. I think she came. I'm not sure, but I'm going to assume she did. And I'm certainly not going to talk about it. I'm just going to roll over because it's all just a little bit too awkward.
Yeah. Look, the one thing I just want to point out to everyone watching is that you can see just how much Jacqueline lights up when she starts to talk about the Tantra stuff and connecting with her own sexuality and people connecting with the sexualities. I kind of want to put in my own bit about Tantra and my experience with Tantra and Tantra work. I've done a number of Jacqueline's workshops. So I've done a number of other workshops as well. And I can hardly proclaim to be a master or anything strange like that. Just I have experience with it. And what it's changed for me as a man is that because I'm more connected to sexual energy. I hate that word because I'm a very logical minded person, but I'm connected with the feeling, the emotions and everything that comes with sex, where I wasn't before. And what that means is that every sexual encounter is a lot more intense. It's a lot more, and it's not like, woo, wow, bang, but it's I'm connected with this other person I'm sleeping with, that I'm having sex with. And what's really amazing is that the more connected I feel to myself, the more connected I feel to any woman that I bring into my life sexually, the better sex is for me and the better sex is for other people because it's better for me and I'm more connected. And by being more connected, I'm making her more connected to her sexuality. And so I'm not doing, my experience has been with Tantra and my experience with Tantra, and Jacqueline, in a minute, feel free to correct me if I'm saying this all wrong, but my experience has been that a man or a woman who's connected pushes their partner into that space. And so I'm not doing some physical magical thing with my penis. I'm not doing some weird position or holding her arm just this way or licking her in just this position. I'm just having regular sex, but because I'm so connected, the whole experience is incredible. And if you filmed it with a camera, just as you were saying, Jacqueline, it doesn't look crazy, but it's intense and it's amazing. And both parties are a part of that and that's what Tantra has been to me. Jacqueline, am I kind of explaining that right?
That's brilliant. That's beautifully put. And thank you so much for sharing, because it certainly, helps to come, when guys hear other men who have that experience. And what you're saying is very true. It becomes incredibly intense, but not intense in the rah, rah, rah type of intense, but just this kind of, kind of a feeling. And you get it from, because probably some of the people listening are like, give us some tips, because we all like tips, don't we? We all want the manual. But a lot of it is about slowing everything down. Like, slow it down. Take your time. Because taking your time anyway, it will help whoever's the higher desire partner, will help them contain their arousal. Like, just to hold it. This beautiful, just kind of hold it there. And it also gives time for the lower desire partner, if you're not at the same point, which is probably most people most of the time, unless it's just that first drunken shag after you've got wasted in a pub, right? When you're both like, oh yeah, let's rip our clothes off. But after that, chances are, one might be a little bit ahead of the other, right? So you slow it down, you take your time, you're paying exquisite attention to what's going on for her, what's going on within yourself. You're not worried about what your penis is doing. Like, forget about your penis. It'll be fine. Your penis is fine. And it doesn't matter if your penis is getting harder or softer, because they do. especially if you want to have extended lovemaking. And when you start modifying your lovemaking to this sort of approach, it can go on for hours and hours. Literally, it can go on for hours and hours. But you're not going to be doing hard shagging for hours and hours, because a penis can't shag non-stop, thrust, 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 thrust for more than a few minutes. It just can't. It is too physically stimulating. And most vaginas can't cope with too much intense thrusting either. It becomes very unpleasant.
Yes.
So don't think that what you're trying to do to be a good lover is to act like a bloody, drill for hours on end. In fact, you actually want to do the opposite to that. You actually want to, rather than sort of thrusting in all the time, here's a little takeaway tip, guys. Instead of focusing on the in, which is what guys tend to do, focus as much on the out as the in. So it's in, out, in, out, in, out. Oh God, I can get excited just thinking about it, because what you're doing, apart from the fact that you're actually creating a vacuum in a vagina, which seems to light everything up, is like, if you want her to want you, and if you want to keep the energy elevated, then there's got to be room to want. There's got to be room to move towards. There's got to be room to desire. And if you're just going, while it might be physically good for her for a period of time, too much of that, it's kind of like, whoa, like there's no room for her to move forward. And she's not going to open up into these kind of orgasms if she's doing this. So by doing the in, out, she's kind of feeling, and then she's wanting you, and it's more subtle than that, because it's happening, and she's kind of doing it as well. And you need to relax your hips to be able to do this. You can't, so guys, really learn to relax around your pelvis, around your belly and your buttocks. Keep your buttocks relaxed. If you're finding you're clenching your buttocks, then you're not doing this right. And you also probably will come too quickly or not come at all if that's your problem. And just relax your buttocks. Start paying attention and practice on your own. If you don't have a partner, or even if you do have a partner, practice on your own first. Practice mindful masturbation. Slow it down. Don't watch porn. If you need some sort of visual imagery, use your mind, okay? Because the porn's just too intense. It's not fair on yourself, okay? In a way, porn's not fair. It's just too intense. It's like offering someone, masses of chocolate cake or something. You're kind of like, I want it, yeah? So you don't look at the porn. Slow it down and focus more on the pleasure and how long you can swim in the pleasure. Become aware of your level of arousal from 0 to 10, as you're pleasuring yourself. And I like to call it pleasuring rather than wanking. Wanking's fine, but it's not beautiful. It's not, okay? We want to get a bit more of an evocative feeling, so that there's more deliciousness in there. If you need a quick wank, have a quick wank. But if we're solo cultivating, as the Taoists used to call it, then you're focusing on the pleasuring yourself. So as you become more aroused, be aware on this scale of 0 to 10, where are you at? And can you, just with your thoughts or with your presence in your penis, with the kind of touch, the pace, the pressure, the rhythm, can you lower it? Can you raise it? Yeah? So that you start owning your arousal. And then when you get good at that, and that could take many, many sessions, or you might be able to do this first time, see if you can just kind of hang around that 7, 8 level, that really delicious, it's just fantastic level, without that craving for the orgasm, for the ejaculation. See if you can really start learning about just how delicious it is to stay in that space. Because if you can stay in that space, sure as hell you can get her to stay in that space. And then your love making, rather than being like, yeah, we're getting really aroused, and then we're just gonna, then we have an orgasm and we're done. Yeah, that's not love making. That's masturbation. And if that's what your sex with your partner is like, well, then it's really just mutual masturbation, right? You're just getting each other off. Yeah, I've had an orgasm, tick. You've had an orgasm, great, tick, done. But even if we're talking hormonally, and keep in mind, people, I've got 3 science degrees and an arts degree, as well as having studied Tantra. So I'm really interested in seeing how our modern scientific understanding matches the old traditions. And one of the things we know, that sort of, shagadelic, let's just go for the big orgasm kind of approach to sex can lead to a dopamine drop afterwards, which means actually afterwards people can feel kind of flat, tired. You do just want to roll over and go to sleep. You don't finish your sexual encounter going, I feel so elevated. I've just got so much more energy. You should feel more energized after a sexual encounter. You should feel elevated, like full of life, so that you want to have sex where you're getting more aroused and you're staying at these peak places. And you can even go, hang on, let me do it in the screen. Yeah. And then you're getting high, so that you're getting more aroused. And along the way, you might have some peak little orgasmic experiences, or bigger, particularly the woman, because women can have masses of orgasms and have many different types of orgasms. Please, guys, don't think that she has to have that one obvious orgasm like you do to have had an orgasm, because women can go on orgasmic waves. Women can stay in these heightened states for a very long time, and it's just exquisite, and it's not necessarily this momentary thing. In fact, if we're looking at it from the tantric point of view, and I think this applies to all good sex, you don't necessarily want her to just have that bang. Like, yeah, okay, that's good. She might not know any other type of experience than that. But when women start realizing that when they get into these heightened states of arousal, and you can tell when she's in that heightened state because she just looks different, like she can't speak, it's just love drunk. She'll just have, whoa, just these beautiful, whether it's kind of catching waves or long waves or like up there with like little peak orgasm, it's completely different. And you finish the encounter, just the happy hormones keep flowing. It's like you start the happy hormones flowing, and they just keep going on and on and on. And so life just becomes this all orgasmic kind of a thing. So when you can shift to that kind of lovemaking, then it's actually like phenomenal. And it just becomes part of life, and it's something that keeps you happy and elevated and young and full of zest for the men as much as for the women.
Yeah, I think that's big. I think a lot of men, it's too easy to fall into the trap of thinking that that sex is supposed to be this just really quick bang. It's happened. I'm trying to get to that point, and if you've never experienced it, I think it's always a little bit of risk of sounding, again, it's the term you hate, but it can almost sound wanky. This notion of these emotions moving up, but it is really just, as a regular guy myself who loves sex, it intensifies it. It makes sex into, before you understand this, before you connect with this, sex for you is like this much, enjoyment. Whereas sex could actually be, what's the whole screen? That much enjoyment. And you do miss out on that. And it's most women miss out on a lot as well. It's not men's fault, it's everyone's fault. It's just society's view of sexuality. Look, Jacqueline, I really, really appreciate everything that you've kind of shared with everyone today. It's been really fantastic. Now, I did ask you, as a number of men know, when I run a session here, I do know that I always like to ask if there's something that we could offer the guys, because I always appreciate when it's one thing for us to be here and share. It's another thing for men to decide, I want to change something in my life and do something about it. Because most people, everyone wants change, but very few people dare to take a step. And I always like to reward that with saying, what can we offer to reward men and inspire people to do more? They've taken the first step. And I know, Jacqueline, you run an online program that you said you'd love to offer a really great discount on. Do you want to quickly tell the guys about that? Or?
Yes, I do, absolutely. But before I do, I just want to acknowledge everyone who's been on this call, because a lot of people have bought into this idea that you should just know, and so you don't have to learn. They will never be good lovers. But you, listening here today, you have the possibility, well, definitely, if you continue on this journey, of being a wonderful lover, which will be great for yourself, be great for the women that you're with. So I really want to acknowledge you for that.